Imagine a world before DNA, before nationwide databases, before the internet lit up every corner of our lives. A world where shadows stretched longer, secrets ran deeper, and justice often felt like a whisper lost in the wind. Welcome, fellow seekers of truth, to an era not so distant, yet utterly alien in its mysteries. An era where the past refused to stay buried, and the chilling echoes of unsolved crimes still reverberate through the silent corridors of history. Tonight, we peel back the layers of time to confront a darkness that defied resolution, puzzle pieces of which remain scattered, tantalizingly out of reach. We journey back to an America grappling with its own identity, a nation on the cusp of seismic shifts, where the booming promises of progress often mask the brutal realities lurking beneath the surface. It was a time when cities swelled with new dreams and old prejudices, where technology advanced, but the human heart, with all its complexities, remained an enduring enigma. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a lingering silence. A silence that has screamed across decades, demanding answers that have never come. Forget what you think you know about true crime. This isn't about rapid-fire breakthroughs or neatly tied-up conclusions. This is about the unseen hand of history itself, shaping events, obscuring clues, and ultimately ensuring that some stories, no matter how desperately we seek their end, remain tragically, eternally open. We're not just recounting a forgotten crime, we're immersing ourselves in the very fabric of the era. We'll explore the societal tensions that might have fueled it, the limited investigative techniques that hampered it, and the human cost that lingers to this day. Why did certain cases, despite their shocking nature, simply vanish from public memory, or worse, become distorted by rumor and speculation? What societal fears and anxieties did they tap into? And how did the very landscape of America, its bustling cities and sprawling frontiers, contribute to the elusive nature of justice? This is a deep dive, not into the whodunit, but into the why couldn't they? We'll dissect the methodologies of law enforcement from a bygone era, examine the nascent forensic science, and consider how prevailing social norms and prejudices of the time might have blinded investigators, or worse, led them astray. We'll walk the very streets where these mysteries unfolded, feeling the grit of the pavement beneath our metaphorical feet, hearing the whispers of a generation that held the keys to answers, but somehow never fully unlocked the truth. This isn't just a historical anecdote, it's a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. It's a stark reminder that some wounds never truly heal, and some questions, even after decades, continue to haunt us. Prepare yourselves, for we are about to enter a labyrinth of shadows, a world where the line between victim and suspect often blurred, and the pursuit of truth was a lonely, arduous journey through an intricate web of secrets. Are you ready to step into the past and confront the chilling reality that some of history's most profound mysteries remain stubbornly, terrifyingly unsolved?
Imagine a world, not so long ago, where the hum of cicadas was the loudest sound on a summer evening, and unlocked doors were a testament to trust. A time when the silhouette of a porch swing at twilight promised safety, not terror. This was Cedar Creek, Ohio, in the suffocating heat of July 1957, a town bathed in the illusion of peace, a beacon of American small-town innocence. But like a crack appearing in a perfectly polished window pane, that illusion was about to shatter, revealing the dark, predatory forces lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life. In 1957, America was riding a wave of post-war prosperity and conformity. Suburbs bloomed, rock and roll was just finding its rebellious stride, and families gathered around their television sets, believing in a future of boundless possibility. Cedar Creek was a microcosm of this dream. Its main street, lined with mom-and-pop shops, buzzed with the gentle rhythm of daily commerce. Children rode bicycles unsupervised, their laughter echoing through elm-lined streets, and neighbors knew each other not just by name, but by the stories etched on their faces. This was the world of the Miller family. Thomas, a hard-working mechanic, Eleanor, a devoted homemaker, and their two bright-eyed children, 8-year-old Lily and 12-year-old Daniel. They were the very embodiment of the American dream, ordinary yet profoundly precious. Their home, a quaint two-story house on Maple Avenue, was always filled with the scent of Eleanor's baking and the playful squabbles of children. They represented everything Cedar Creek believed itself to be: secure, loving, and fundamentally good. Then came the night of July 18th, a Thursday. The air was thick and heavy, promising a thunderstorm that never quite broke. Thomas Miller had worked late, fixing a stubborn engine, and Eleanor had tucked the children into bed, reading Lily a final story about a brave princess, and Daniel an adventure comic. The town's streetlights cast long, dancing shadows, turning familiar trees into monstrous silhouettes. Sometime after midnight, a different kind of shadow fell over Maple Avenue. No screams, no struggle, just an unnatural quiet, like the very breath of the town had been sucked away. The kind of silence that precedes a cataclysm. Forensic understanding in 1957 was rudimentary, but what investigators would later piece together painted a chilling picture. An intruder, unseen and unheard, gained entry. They moved through the quiet home with a terrifying precision, their presence a stark, violent contrast to the peaceful slumber of the family. The details, even decades later, remain sparse and fragmented, obscured by the limitations of the era's investigative tools and the sheer brutality of the act. But the outcome was horrifyingly clear. The tranquility of Maple Avenue, of Cedar Creek itself, was not just disturbed, it was utterly obliterated. It was Mrs. Gable, the next-door neighbor, who first sensed something was profoundly wrong. The Miller's porch light still on at 8 a.m., the newspaper untouched, and an eerie quiet where normally children's morning chatter would be. Her cautious knock went unanswered. What she discovered inside would forever scar the idyllic image of Cedar Creek. The scene was one of unimaginable horror. The entire Miller family, Thomas, Eleanor, Lily, and Daniel, were found murdered in their beds, victims of an unspeakable act of violence. The town's single police officer, Sheriff Brody, a man who'd spent his career mediating dog disputes and traffic infractions, was instantly overwhelmed. The quiet, predictable rhythm of Cedar Creek screeched to a halt. News traveled not by phone, which few homes had, but by word of mouth, by shocked whispers that spread like wildfire through the town square, chilling every resident to the bone. Parents clutched their children tighter. Doors that had never known a lock were suddenly bolted, windows latched. The very air seemed to thicken with fear and suspicion. Who could do such a thing? And why? This wasn't some big city crime. This was their Cedar Creek, their neighbors. The brutal efficiency of the crime, combined with the lack of forced entry, fueled a terrifying thought. Could the killer be one of their own? The perceived innocence of the post-war era, the belief in fundamental American safety, was not just challenged, it was irrevocably shattered on that hot July morning. A shadow, dark and enduring, had fallen over Cedar Creek, and it would never truly lift. Imagine a time before DNA, before cell phones, before databases that could link a whisper to a suspect halfway across the country. A time when a crime wasn't just a puzzle, but a dark, sprawling void, swallowed by the silence of an unforgiving past. This is where our story truly begins.
not with the gruesome discovery, but with the frantic, stumbling steps of a world ill-equipped to understand the monster in its midst. When the news of the tragedy ripped through the quiet community, it wasn't just shock that followed. It was a desperate, primal urge for answers, quickly curdling into fear. But the year was, say, 1938, and the tools available to those tasked with solving such horrors were, by today's standards, almost laughably primitive. Police work relied heavily on instinct, local gossip, and the sheer grit of individual officers, detectives by necessity, not by advanced training. Consider fingerprinting, the cornerstone of modern forensics. In 1938, it was a burgeoning science, far from the systematized practice we know today. No vast digital databases, no rapid cross-referencing. A print, if found and carefully lifted with rudimentary techniques, meant a painstaking, often fruitless manual search through limited paper records, hoping for a match that might not even exist locally. The concept of latent prints was understood, but reliable detection and preservation methods were crude, often leading to crucial evidence being overlooked or inadvertently destroyed. Every subtle impression held a secret, but the era lacked the sophisticated keys to unlock them. And forensic science, in its broader sense, less a precise science, more an evolving art of educated guesswork. Ballistics analysis was rudimentary. A bullet could be matched to a gun, but understanding wound dynamics or residue was profoundly limited. Blood typing, in its infancy, offered only broad categories: A, B, AB, O, providing no individual identification. The very idea of DNA evidence was light years away, utterly unimaginable. Every scrap of physical evidence was a treasure, yet its story remained largely untold, trapped by the profound limitations of the era's scientific knowledge. Communication, too, presented an immense hurdle. News traveled by clunky telephone exchanges, telegraph, or by word of mouth and slow, ink-stained newspapers. No instant broadcast, no national alert system. A suspect could vanish into the vast American landscape, truly disappear, before the news crossed county or state lines. Coordinating efforts between different jurisdictions was a slow, bureaucratic nightmare, hampered by rivalries, lack of standardized procedures, and the absence of a unified national crime database. Vital information remained siloed. Into this void stepped men like Detective Thomas O'Malley or Sheriff Earl Thompson, local law enforcement often under-resourced, overworked, and thrust into investigations far beyond their typical experience. Their dedication was immense, their personal sacrifice significant, but their training, by modern standards, incredibly limited. They walked crime scenes, scoured areas, interviewed distraught families and terrified witnesses, chasing every lead, no matter how faint. Their notebooks filled with scribbled observations, but the lack of verifiable facts left them grasping in the dark. The community, meanwhile, was gripped by a suffocating mix of raw fear, pervasive grief, and morbid fascination. Local newspapers screamed sensational headlines, often speculating wildly, fueling public anxiety and their desperate need for answers. Every stranger was viewed with suspicion, every shadow held a potential threat. Rumors, unchecked by facts, spread like wildfire, creating a chaotic landscape of half-truths and escalating paranoia. Friend turned on friend, neighbor eyed neighbor with mistrust. The prevailing theories were born more of fear and desperation than concrete evidence. Was it a lone transient, a local grudge, a madman lurking in the shadows? Without tangible evidence, pure speculation filled the void, twisting minds. Neighbors whispered of past grievances, old feuds, illicit affairs, or even, in the darkest corners, supernatural explanations, anything to make sense of the senseless. The very anonymity of the killer, coupled with the primitive investigation, gave birth to a public terror that transcended the immediate tragedy. It was a terror born of the unknown, amplified by the inability of authorities to provide comfort or closure. Every dead end, every failed lead, every unanswered question chipped away at the community's security, leaving behind a lingering, unhealed scar. The footprints were there, etched into the past, but the path they led to remained shrouded in an impenetrable darkness, mocking the frantic, desperate search for truth.
And so, the stage was set. Not for a grand reveal, but for a frustrating descent into a labyrinth of human frailty and unanswered questions. The initial shock of the crime began to morph into a chilling echo of doubt, a web of whispers spun not just by rumor, but by the very lack of definitive answers. Who could have committed such a heinous act? The town, once unified in grief, splintered into factions, each clutching to their own version of the truth, or perhaps their preferred lie. First, there was Arthur Finch. A recent transplant to the quiet, insular community, Arthur was an artist, a dreamer, and immediately an outsider. His bohemian lifestyle, his late-night walks, and his general aloofness made him an easy target for suspicion. His alibi? He claimed he was working late in his studio, lost in a creative trance, a claim with no witnesses to corroborate it. The local sheriff's office, under immense public pressure, leaned heavily on Arthur, seeing in him the perfect scapegoat. Yet for all their badgering, for all the whispered accusations, nothing concrete ever tied him to the crime. He was just different, and in a small town, different often means guilty. Then the focus shifted to someone far closer to the victim's inner circle, Richard Vance. A seemingly respectable businessman, a pillar of the community and a close friend, Richard projected an image of unwavering probity, but beneath the surface, whispers of financial troubles and a hidden volatile temper began to circulate. His alibi was ironclad, or so it seemed, a family gathering miles away. Yet a crucial detail emerged, a brief, unexplained absence during the exact time frame of the crime. Was it enough to shatter his carefully constructed facade? The theory gained traction, an intimate crime born of passion or desperation, committed by someone known, trusted. This narrative, however unsettling, felt more plausible to many. As the investigation deepened, more figures emerged from the shadows. The disgruntled former employee with a history of minor offenses, the quiet recluse who lived just down the street, known for his eccentricities. Even a transient passing through town on the night in question became a fleeting person of interest. Each new lead was a thread, pulled taut, promising to unravel the mystery, only to snap and leave the investigators clutching at air. The community itself became a suspect, its secrets and petty rivalries laid bare under the harsh glare of scrutiny. The landscape of the investigation became littered with false leads and tantalizing red herrings. A blood-stained scarf found miles from the crime scene, initially heralded as a crucial breakthrough, turned out to be from an unrelated incident. A frantic phone call from a supposed witness, claiming to have seen a shadowy figure fleeing the scene, led to an exhaustive search that yielded nothing but empty woods. A cryptic note left anonymously at the police station offered tantalizing clues that pointed towards a secret society, only to be dismissed as the ramblings of a prankster or a troubled mind. Each dead end drained resources, spirit, and most crucially, precious time. The frustration became palpable. For the detectives, it was a gnawing sense of failure, a relentless pursuit of phantoms. For the public, it was a corrosive mix of fear and disillusionment. The initial outrage gave way to a weary acceptance, then a simmering anger. People began to question the competence of the authorities, the safety of their own homes, and the very fabric of their community. Trust eroded. The vibrant town became shrouded in a pall of suspicion. Every stranger was eyed with caution, every familiar face with a lingering question mark.
The inability to bring the perpetrator to justice was not just a failure of the law, it was a wound left unhealed in the collective psyche of a generation. And so, inevitably, the active investigation began to wane. The active investigation began to wane. The grand pronouncements of impending breakthroughs ceased. The newspaper headlines grew smaller, then disappeared. The task force disbanded. The files, once active and teeming with possibilities, gathered dust in the cold case vault. The vibrant theories, once debated in hushed tones, became mere echoes, whispers fading into the background of daily life. The trail went cold. The perpetrator, if they were still alive, walked free, unburdened by justice. The victim and their memory became just another entry in the long, tragic ledger of America's unsolved mysteries. A chilling reminder that sometimes the most profound questions remain forever unanswered, suspended in the haunting silence of doubt.
Time. It's a relentless current, sweeping away memories, dulling the sharp edges of pain, and often burying the past beneath layers of new headlines and daily distractions. For most, the brutal saga we're examining today became just another chilling anecdote, whispered in hushed tones, then eventually a forgotten name in the annals of American crime. The initial shockwave of horror receded, the national spotlight dimmed, and the screaming headlines that once plastered newspapers across the country yellowed and crumbled into oblivion. The world moved on, as it always does. But for a select few, time did not heal. It only deepened the wound, etching the absence of answers into the very fabric of their lives. For the families of the victims, every sunrise was a stark reminder of the missing. Every sunset, a fresh torment of what might have been. Imagine a parent gazing at an empty chair at the dinner table year after year, the silence amplifying the unanswered question, why? For them, this wasn't a cold case. It was an open, festering wound that refused to close. They lived in a perpetual state of limbo, their grief a constant companion, their hope a fragile flicker against the encroaching darkness. The passage of anniversaries, 5 years, 10 years, 20, then 30, weren't just calendar milestones. They were painful tributes to enduring loss, each one a fresh wave of agony. And it wasn't just the families. Think of the investigators, the dedicated few who carried the burden of this unsolved mystery on their shoulders for decades. They'd pore over dusty case files, re-interview witnesses whose memories had faded like old photographs, and chase down leads that invariably led to dead ends. For them, the case became a professional ghost, an unfinished symphony echoing in their careers. They knew the faces, the names, the agonizing details that the public had long forgotten. Every new piece of forensic technology, every fresh pair of eyes on the case file brought a momentary surge of renewed effort, a desperate belief that this time, the truth would emerge from the shadows. Over the years, the case would periodically stir, like a slumbering beast momentarily roused. A major anniversary, perhaps, would prompt a local news feature, a brief mention on a true crime blog, or a new generation of armchair detectives rediscovering its chilling details. These moments were bittersweet for the families. On one hand, the case was remembered, its victims not entirely forgotten. On the other, the fleeting attention often failed to yield the breakthrough they so desperately craved, only to recede once more into the quiet hum of unresolved mystery. Yet, through all the silence and the fading memory, a relentless force persisted. The families themselves. They became the unwavering guardians of the unsolved. They formed advocacy groups, organized vigils, published websites, and tirelessly campaigned to keep the case alive, to ensure their loved ones were not reduced to mere statistics. Their resolve was a testament to enduring love and an unshakable belief in justice, even when it seemed to elude them for generations. They understood that if they let go, the case might truly die. They understood the power of collective memory, and they became its most fervent champions. This enduring quality is precisely what defines a sleeping giant case. It's a mystery that, despite the passage of time and the shift in public consciousness, retains an inherent power, a latent potential for resolution. It's not just cold, it's dormant, waiting for the right catalyst, a new witness, a scientific advancement, a fresh perspective to awaken it from its long slumber. This case in particular is one such giant. It whispers through the decades, a ghostly echo demanding an answer, proving that some secrets simply cannot remain buried forever. It's a powerful reminder that even after years of silence, a cold embrace can suddenly awaken with the warmth of a long-awaited truth.
The whispers never truly die, do they? They merely shift, mutate, carried on the winds of time until new ears are ready to hear them. For decades, the chilling saga of the Zodiac Killer has been a persistent hum in the archives of American crime, a symphony of terror played out in cryptic ciphers and taunting letters, a shadow that stretched far beyond the serene landscapes of Northern California. But what happens when the echoes of the past meet the cutting edge of the future? What new threads can be unraveled when cold case detectives, armed with tools unimaginable in the 1960s, revisit these silent, dusty files? The Zodiac case, perhaps more than any other, epitomizes this relentless pursuit of truth across time. In the analog world of the late 60s, forensic science was rudimentary. Fingerprints were paramount, but DNA profiling, the gold standard of modern identification, was still decades away from its revolutionary debut. Imagine, if you will, the painstaking process of revisiting physical evidence, the fragments of envelopes, the stamps licked by the killer, the very paper his taunts were scrawled upon. These seemingly innocuous items, once examined with the limited vision of the past, are now subjected to the high-definition lens of modern forensics. Every year, new techniques emerge: advanced touch DNA analysis, mitochondrial DNA sequencing, familial searching through vast genealogical databases. Each breakthrough turns yesterday's dead ends into today's tantalizing leads, like watching a spectral image slowly materialize from a blurred photograph. The promise of microscopic skin cells or traces of saliva holding the key to a phantom's identity keeps the flame of hope eternally alive, even if a definitive match remains elusive. And it's not just about the science, it's profoundly about the human element too. Witnesses, perhaps too traumatized or too young to fully articulate their experiences decades ago, might now, with the benefit of time, healing, and therapy, recall a crucial detail, a fleeting observation. Modern psychology allows for more nuanced interviews, understanding the complex, often fractured nature of memory. Think of those grainy police sketches, once static images, now potentially enhanced by artificial intelligence, or the original ciphertexts subjected to computational linguistics that could reveal hidden patterns previously invisible to the human eye. The digital age, paradoxically, has also transformed the landscape of cold case investigation. Vast archives of police reports, newspaper clippings, and FBI files are now digitized, searchable, and cross-referenced with unprecedented speed. Online communities of amateur sleuths, some highly dedicated and meticulous, pore over this digitized evidence, cross-referencing facts and debating theories with an intensity that mirrors professional investigations. While often a double-edged sword, this collective intellect, fueled by passion,
sometimes unearths overlooked connections, challenging established narratives, and forcing a reevaluation of assumptions that have lingered for half a century. Yet, despite these monumental leaps, the Zodiac remains a ghost. Why? What makes this case so enduringly baffling, so resistant to the relentless march of technological progress? It's the sheer audacity of the killer, the calculated mind behind the taunts, the chilling ability to disappear without a trace in an era before pervasive surveillance and interconnected databases. The Zodiac didn't just murder, he waged a psychological war on an entire city, on the very concept of law and order, reveling in the terror he inflicted. The absence of a clear, conventional motive beyond the thrill of control, the lack of a consistent victim profile, he targeted young couples, then a lone cab driver, and the bizarre theatrical criminality of his actions all contribute to a puzzle where pieces seem to constantly shift, defy categorization. He meticulously chose his targets, his methods, and his communication, all designed to confound and provoke, leaving behind just enough to taunt, but never enough to capture.
The Zodiac case profoundly impacted American society and law enforcement. It propelled the need for interagency cooperation and psychological profiling, forever changing how serial killers were hunted. Yet, his evasion fueled public paranoia and a deep-seated fear that some monsters truly could walk among us undetected. Every new lead, every piece of advanced technology, every re-examined archive only deepens the mystery in some ways, highlighting how a person could be so utterly present in their terror and yet so utterly absent from the public record. Is the killer dead? Did he simply stop, his dark desires sated or redirected? Or did he slip into plain sight, living a quiet, unassuming life, knowing his identity was eternally shrouded in the fog of time? The case forces us to confront the limits of justice, the fragility of memory, and the chilling reality that some elusive figures truly vanish into the ether, leaving behind only whispers and unanswered questions that echo through generations.
From the moment a life is stolen, an echo begins. It doesn't fade with time, it resonates, twisting through the fabric of a community, a silent, unending tremor. The case we've explored, though decades may have passed since its chilling climax, continues to whisper its presence, a ghost in the collective memory, especially for those who lived through its immediate, shattering aftermath. Imagine a town, once feeling safe, now perpetually looking over its shoulder, a shadow of suspicion cast over familiar faces. Businesses struggled, trust eroded, and the very innocence of childhood was forever tainted. The fear wasn't just for the victim, it was for every child, every neighbor, every loved one. It reshaped daily routines, locked doors that once stood open, and instilled a vigilance that became a permanent resident. This wasn't merely a statistic, it was a tearing of the social contract, a wound that festered, leaving an indelible scar on the soul of the place.